A tradwife, or a traditional wife, is a term regarding a woman who believes in traditional gender roles in a patriarchal marriage. Many tradwives believe that a woman does not lose rights by choosing to take a traditional gender role in marriage, and this seems to be close to the female counterpart to men in the manosphere, Andrew Tate followers, and those who just tend to believe that a woman should stay in the house and be a homemaker while the man goes out and makes money. One of the greatest things overlooked in the tradwife movement is its correlation with right-wing supremacy. The political right in the United States today makes certain metaphysical and material promises to women that both exploit and quiet some of women's deepest fears. These fears originate in the perception that male violence against women is uncontrollable and unpredictable. Dependent on and subservient to men, women are always subject to this violence. The right promises to put enforceable restraints on male aggression, thus simplifying survival for women, to make the world slightly more habitable. In other words, the right offers women a simple, fixed, predetermined social, biological, and sexual order.
Okay, so I'm here to make a clarification video because of the big controversy going around about the term tradwife and the intent behind the term, as well as the intent behind my channel and what I post. If you are not familiar with the term tradwife, it is a woman who chooses to live a more traditional life with ultra-traditional gender roles. So the man goes outside the house, works, provides for the family. The woman stays home and she's the homemaker. She takes care of the home and the children if there are any. The misconception about the tradwife movement, it's not really a movement. Nobody's pushing it. People are typically just living it and maybe showcasing their lifestyle like me. And we believe our place, specifically us as individuals, believe our purpose
and
is
this
to
is
be
once
homemakers.
again where class versus individualistic thinking comes into play. Because yes, you as an individual choose to get married and let your husband support you, and that's what you want to do with your life. But as a class, for hundreds of years, that has been the only way that a woman could survive, is to rely on a man, to pick one man to survive off of. You're not doing anything new or amazing here. You're not even reinventing the wheel. This is the same wheel that's been rolling for the past as long as civilization has existed. You're not doing anything new here.
It doesn't mean that we are trying to take away what women fought for. There are a lot of people trying to make this a sinister thing or put some other darker meaning behind the term tradwife. Nobody is doing that. No tradwife TikTokers are saying every woman's place is in their home.
No, but what you are doing is you are glamorizing a lifestyle that is available to you not because you are a stay-at-home mom, but because your husband makes enough money to support you to do this. You're portraying your life as being tranquil and aesthetic and not having to do paid work and being able to focus on family, and it's basically you presenting your lifestyle against hustle culture and burnout, which is presenting a return to traditional roles as a solution to the overwork of women. But the issue is that you are now dependent on a man. And if he ever decides that he wants to abuse you, if he ever decides that he wants to restrict what you use money for, you can't get back in the workplace after you've been out for 20 years easily. No, you won't be able to have an escape route because you've relied on someone, you're dependent on someone for everything.
We as individuals are just choosing to be homemakers. That's all. Tradwives also believe that they should submit to their husbands and serve their husbands and family, and that triggers people because the words submit and serve, it makes women think that we're saying that we're less than a man. That's not what we're saying.
Submit, defined as to accept or yield to a superior force or to the authority or will of another person. So, yes, despite how you might try to say that it's not dehumanizing or demeaning, basically, you are bowing down to another person's will, and you're not making your own choices of your own free will. You are following someone else's lead. So yeah, that's following traditional gender roles, which were oppressive and continue to be oppressive to women.
Tradwives just believe that they are here as women for a different role, equally as important though. I can make another video on that another time. To be a homemaker and to have traditional values does not make us bad people. It's 2022. Women should have the choice to be homemakers or not without being judged.
It's not judgment, it's concern. The era that you're so nostalgic for, the 1950s, the housewife era only lasted for a couple decades, and by 1952, an estimated 50,000 mostly female patients in the US and Canada had been lobotomized, and millions of women were prescribed Mother's Little Helper barbiturates for anxiety and depression. The idea that 1950s housewives led happy, fulfilled lives is thoroughly ahistorical. Not to mention, FGM was commonly used even in the US. From the 1880s to 1950s, excision was often performed to prevent and treat lesbianism, masturbation, depression, hysteria, and nymphomania. These procedures continued well into the 1970s and were covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance until 1977. The traditional lifestyle she's glorifying, that she's wishing for, that she's nostalgic for, never actually existed. Housewives were never happy with their lot in life. They were restricted. Women couldn't have a bank account of their own until the 70s. You had no choice. And so all those nostalgic reminiscing of the 1950s where mommy made dinner every night, nice and fresh, you don't know what kind of hell she went through to present that image to you, because that's not what gets talked about. We don't talk about it.
And women should also be able to use the term tradwife, which means traditional wife, and not be shunned for wanting to be more traditional.
Okay, and what that actually means is that after, he decides he wants to leave you, because he could very well stay with you until you die and you could have a happy little life. But if he decides in 5 years he wants to trade in for a newer model, as many guys do, and as many guys do talk about doing when they reach certain heights of success, then what are you going to do? If you have a giant gap in your employment history, it makes it impossible, even if you have a college degree, to stay up to date in your field with a well-paying job. It becomes impossible to get hired to support yourself. Not to mention that if he says you're out today, you aren't married, so you can't even get anything from him to help get yourself on your feet. You're just screwed because you have no skills, you have no job history, and you have no money. You're completely reliant on someone else, and I'm glad that you believe that someone else is worth, depending on like that. But the truth is, all of our mothers, all of our foremothers before us have thought the same damn thing, and they made that mistake. The difference is they didn't have a choice. If your choice is to get married or to be destitute, then you get married. If you have one choice, it's not a choice at all. You have choices. You have choices, and you are making one which can put you in intense danger. It can get you in intense danger, and you're making this choice and presenting it as this wonderful, great freedom from working in the capitalistic hellscape we're in. And instead of saying, hey, maybe we should fix the capitalism, you're pointing it out as, oh, no, it's the enhanced freedoms for women that is to blame.
Asking stay-at-home moms or housewives what they're going to do if their man just up and leaves them is the equivalent of asking someone with a traditional job, what are you going to do if your boss fires you tomorrow?
Not really, because if you had a job, then you have a work history and you can apply for another job. Maybe you'll be down on your luck, but you have control of your own money and your own finances. You had your own source of money and you were handling your own budgeting. You should have money and at least have some avenues to get money again, because you are able to get a job and re-enter the workforce. Someone who's a stay-at-home mom for 20 years isn't going to have that option, because they're going to have that huge gap of employment and they're not going to have work skills.
The same shit, man. I'm going to figure it out. Like, you wouldn't tell someone with a traditional job, hey, do you have a backup job? Is there a job that you know is going to hire you tomorrow if this one fires you today? Because that's the reality of working any job, even if you're a stay-at-home mom.
Except if you just get randomly fired, you're able to get unemployment benefits. Again, you'll have access to your own money and you'll have a work history, which will make it easier for you to get on your feet than if you suddenly come up and go to a job interview and say, hey, I would like to make this much money, please hire me. The thing is, yeah, maybe as a stay-at-home mom, you'll be able to figure out and get a job at like McDonald's or working in a restaurant or waitressing, but those jobs don't pay enough money to support yourself, not without a partner. These two things are not comparable. You're comparing apples to oranges here, because the issue that people are bringing up when they criticize tradwives for being reliant on a man, is that you are being reliant, you are being dependent on somebody else, and you are putting yourself into a position which means that you will have to submit and rely on someone else Even if you don't like how they're treating you, even if they're abusive, even if they're shitty, even if they're gambling away all the money, you don't have any choices because you do not have any money or employment.
Something could happen tomorrow. Like anything in life, it comes down to having common sense, okay? When you go into a marriage and that marriage might end, everything that you guys have created together, bought together, everything is now a marital asset, okay? So if my man up and leaves me tomorrow, first of all, I'm coming for him for alimony, child support, if I need it, and I absolutely couldn't get a job, which just isn't reality. Have you seen this economy? Everyone is hiring. You go get a job.
Yeah, you can get a job at McDonald's or at a restaurant or a low-wage job, but you're not going to be able to get one that'll take care of you and multiple kids. Not to mention the added cost of needing childcare because you would need to work a job.
Either way, if I needed it, assistance is a thing. It's very real. It's not like you're going to end up in a box on the side of the road. Regardless, we have assets together. We have retirement funds. We have 401ks. We have so many savings accounts. We have stocks, right? We have a house together. We have cars together.
And once again, I think it's important to point out how class plays a role here, because they sound like they are upper middle class, if not above that, when it comes to terms of finance. If you are someone who is not in that bracket, that tax bracket, you're not going to have that many options when you get divorced. There are so many women I know who are single mothers who they get divorced, they were a housewife, or they work the low-wage part-time job. They're divorced now, they have 2-3 kids with this guy. What are they going to split? They have one car between them, maybe two. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help. It's not going to pay your bills. Most people do not have all of these things. And when you're glorifying a trad wife, you're glorifying staying at home and being submissive to your man, you're also not mentioning the privileges that you have in the financial assets that you guys have together.
All of those are split when you get divorced. You're going to go to court and they're going to determine who gets these things, right? And it's usually the mom because she's the sole caregiver. There are laws in place that literally prevent stay-at-home moms from being put out with nothing after a marriage. That's why these laws exist. Because men used to treat women like shit and force them into being stay-at-home moms, right? And then kick them out because they could go cheat with neighbor Martha, and then they leave her with nothing and she has nothing to show for it. That's just not the reality in 2022. We have so many options, including but not limited to life insurance if he happens to mysteriously fall over dead the next day. Let's just touch on, I do have an education behind me. I did leave a career behind me. I have a career right now. Most of the time I make more money than my husband, so I might not get that alimony, but I think I'll be fine either way. Virtually no stay-at-home mom becomes a stay-at-home mom because she has just nothing else to do, no education, no work behind her. Usually we make the intentional decision to leave our careers behind us to stay home and raise our kids. Y'all don't want to hear that though. Stop fear-mongering.
And you know what? I am happy for you that you decided to focus on your family and your kids. Honestly, I am. I think that's a great thing that you want to focus on your family. My issue is that what you're describing here is not always the case. My parents got divorced when I was 3. They were married for about 2 years, and during the divorce, my mom lost custody of me because my dad paid off the guardian ad litem. She didn't get any spousal support. She didn't get any assets. Nothing at all. And she ended up having to go back on her feet after 2 years of not working. And it was very hard to find jobs that paid as much as she had made before she left the job market. So even if you do have an education, even if you are, like you are, currently privileged enough to have had an education and to probably have had assets coming into this marriage, that's not how it's going to be for everyone. And presenting being a trad wife as being just perfect option, don't worry about it, don't think it through, it's dangerous, quite frankly, to present it like this to many people who are just going to see being a trad wife as an escape from the capitalistic overworking that we're currently all facing.
I could offer my whole self, no secrets and all, loyalty, faithfulness, everything that could make him happy.
You ever hear a Western woman talking about how she's going to make her man happy? No. You know what we hear from the West? What a man can do to make me happy. What a man can bring to the table for me. What I can benefit. How I could spend his money.
And again, you have to consider how your choice to be a housewife benefits your husband, your man, and is a detriment to you. As we've previously discussed in the separatism video, men with wives live longer. Married men are more likely than single men with equal education to be among the top 1% of earners because of the benefit of women's unpaid labor. Married men earn between 10 and 40% more than otherwise comparable single men. Men are literally buying their downtime with women's work. Working mothers get about 30 minutes of downtime each day compared to 4 hours for working fathers. And around the globe, women work longer and harder than men. It's just a cigarette and it cannot be that bad. Honey, don't you love me and you know it makes me sad. It's just a cigarette like you always used to do. I was different then, I don't need them to be cool. Basically, in conclusion, it's just Tradwives are a response to a dissatisfaction with the lives women face when it comes to the grind and the working. Because yes, women do have to work harder than men because typically you are doing more of the household labor in addition to working a full-time job. And that is a lot to deal with. During the pandemic, most job losses were by women as they had to come back into the household to take care of childcare because they didn't have the chance to do childcare outside of the home. Even now, there's a big issue with finding childcare, which is one of the reasons why I get paid so well as a nanny, because there's always a need for childcare, and those needs aren't being filled. And then, of course, you have the hypersexualization, and I mean, if you're going to be talking about Tradwives, you have to talk about conservative women, which, thankfully for us all, Andrea Dworkin wrote about many, many years ago. The disinterested or hostile male observer can categorize women as conservative in some metaphysical sense because it is true that women as a class adhere rather strictly to the traditions and values of their social context, whatever the character of that context. In societies of whatever description, however narrowly or broadly defined, women as a class are the dulled conformist, the orthodox believers, the obedient followers, the disciples of unwavering faith. To waver, whatever the creed of the men around them, is tantamount to rebellion. It is dangerous. Most women, holding on for dear life, do not dare abandon blind faith. From father's house to husband's house to a grave that might not be her own, a woman acquiesces to male authority in order to gain some protection from male violence. She conforms in order to be as safe as she can be. Sometimes it is a lethargic conformity, in which case male demands slowly close in on her, as if she were a character buried alive in an Edgar Allan Poe story. Sometimes it is a militant conformity. She will save herself by proving that she is loyal, obedient, useful, even fanatic in the service of the men around her. She is the happy hooker, the happy homemaker, the exemplary Christian, the pure academic, the perfect comrade, the terrorist par excellence. Whatever the values, she will embody them with a perfect fidelity. The males really keep up with their part of the bargain as she understands it. Protection from male violence against her person. But the militant conformist is given so much of herself. Her labor, heart, soul, often her body, often children, that this betrayal is akin to nailing the coffin shut. The corpse is beyond caring. There is a reason why the generation of women after the 1950s housewives often took a long time to settle down and get married, because they saw what marriage, what womanhood, what housewives were like in their mothers. And because there has been a generation gap between seeing what a real 1950s housewife generation looked like, that we are coming full circle again to women who think that this is the path to go because they haven't seen it firsthand. Now they're going to experience it firsthand instead. As Dworkin states, most girls, however much they resent their mothers, do become very much like them. Rebellion can rarely survive the aversion therapy that passes for being brought up female. Male violence acts directly on the girl through her father or brother or uncle or any number of male professionals or strangers, as it did and does on her mother, and she too is forced to learn to conform in order to survive. A girl may, as she enters adulthood, repudiate the particular set of males with whom her mother is allied, run with a different pack as it were, but she will replicate her mother's patterns in acquiescing to male authority within her own chosen set. Using both force and threat, men in all camps demand that women accept abuse in silence and shame, tie themselves to hearth and home with rope made of self-blame, unspoken rage, grief, and resentment. Or perhaps I should leave you with my favorite passage from right-wing women. The accounts of rape, wife-beating, forced childbearing, medical butchering, sex-motivated murder, forced prostitution, physical mutilation, sadistic psychological abuse, and the other commonplaces of female experience that are excavated from the past or given by contemporary survivors should leave the heart seared, the mind in anguish, the conscience in upheaval. But they do not. No matter how often these stories are told, with whatever clarity or eloquence, bitterness or sorrow, they might as well have been whispered in wind or written in sand. They disappear as if they were nothing. The tellers and the stories are ignored or ridiculed, threatened back into silence and destroyed, and the experience of female suffering is buried in cultural invisibility and contempt. Because women's testimony is not and cannot be validated by the witness of men who have experienced the same events and given them the same value, the very reality of abuse sustained by women, despite its overwhelming pervasiveness and constancy, is negated. It is negated in the transactions of everyday life, and it is negated in the history books, left out, and it is negated by those who claim to care about suffering, but are blind to the suffering. The problem, simply stated, is that one must believe in the existence of the person in order to recognize the authenticity of her suffering. Neither men nor women believe in the existence of women as significant beings. It is impossible to remember as real the suffering of someone who by definition has no legitimate claim to dignity or freedom, someone who is in fact viewed as something, an object or an absence. And if a woman, an individual woman multiplied by billions, does not believe in her own discrete existence and therefore cannot credit the authenticity of her own suffering, she is erased, cancelled out, and the meaning of her life, whatever it is, whatever it might have been, is lost. This loss cannot be calculated or comprehended. It is vast and awful, and nothing will ever make up for it.